Hello and welcome into Southeastern 16's preseason power rankings. Yes, I realize we've done some in the offseason. This is the full staff version. We've had exhibitions to watch. We've had previews to digest. We put a lot of time and thought into it. So with no further ado, Blake Lovell, I'll let you start us off at the bottom with our number 16 team.
Yep, and as you'll see with all these rankings, we absolutely overreacted to every single exhibition box score out there, maybe for some of these teams. But we start at the bottom. I don't know how much overreacting there is. And the team that we all just completely blanked on last week in the live stream when it came to word association, we decided, I guess, composite-wise, to put this team at 16, and that's LSU, who I think I know the team that I just have the least feel for going into the season. Not because I don't think they can win games. I don't know. I think you're looking at a roster of guys who are breakout candidates, but, and there are guys there that have contributed good minutes both at LSU and elsewhere, but I don't have a good read on this team, and I just, maybe that's why they wound up being at 16 here in our composite ranking.
Yeah, and they're tough to kind of pin down because Damian Collins supposed to be the man there at the 5. We haven't seen him play in a long time. And you're counting on breakouts from guys like Tyrell Ward and Jalen Reed, and then arguably some of your better players are the backcourt transfers with Jordan Sears and Cam Carter. So got a lot of freshmen too. I just have no clue as well. Some things could work, some could not. I have no feel for this team, so that's why I got them down here.
Yeah, their most experienced players are Cam Carter, Kansas State transfer, Jordan Sears, Tennessee Martin transfer, DJ Bailey, Richmond transfer. So that's probably their starting 1 to 3, I would guess, and that's going to make them just hard to know, as it is the case with a lot of teams that are very reliant on transfers. All right, Blake.
Well, the good news for LSU is that they're picked 16th by us. All right, now, because they're going to be the South Carolina of this season. Just wait for it. All right, number 15, Vanderbilt, the Commodores, who Max and I were very high on in the summer. I think we've gone a little bit back on that, and it's not because we don't think there is the potential to be the sleeper team in the SEC, which I think I dubbed them as probably 2 or 3 months ago. I keep looking at the front court, and I want to see it, I think, in terms of how they're going to play against some of these other teams. They don't have the size of a lot of other SEC teams, but I think that they're going to be able to shoot the ball. I think their guard play will be good. I think they can score, but as Chris has sort of, laughed at me about, this could be my team of the season because they may score a lot of points, but they may not be able to stop anybody. And, hey, I'd be okay with that. I just don't know if it's going to equate into being higher up the standings, but again, there's still some intrigue there in a Mark Byington-led Vanderbilt squad here.
Yeah, I'll throw it right over to Chris, because Chris looks like he's just chomping at the bit to get a rebuttal in.
You know the differences between you two? Max, you just embrace wherever it's going to go next. Like you broke up with Mississippi State. Yep, and you said, I'm going full on A&M. You faced it head on. You said, we're just different people now. Blake is in denial. Blake's going to love this team because they're not going to play defense and they're going to shoot the 3 without a conscience. And so I think friends doing friend things, I think we owe it to our man Blake to just nudge him along. But in all seriousness, a couple of interesting things. I do think that height and rebounding and defenses are going to be big problems for them. But a couple little fun facts. This team, I think, in terms of Division I guys, wherever they played last year, I think this team number 2 in minutes in the league coming in, minutes played by its roster last year. Now, if you take Kajani Wright out of that, they may drop to 3. I'd have to check that. And Wright, I'm hearing, may not play this year. That's the closest thing they had to a rim protector. And number 2, assist to turnover ratio by that roster, 1.7. That is hands down the best number in the league. So they take care of the ball. They're going to shoot it a lot. They're going to play fast.
So Chris had them at 1, but somehow in the composite they wound up at 15. That's what I've heard. But, all right, number 14 is Oklahoma. And by the way, too, I'm going to pull up after we do this one. I'm going to look at the SEC preseason rankings because I don't remember where everyone was ranked, and I'm going to give you the difference as I pull these up each time. All right, so Oklahoma's at 14. Another team, admittedly just for myself when I did these rankings, don't have a great feel on Oklahoma. But I think I may be moving towards Max's scenario here where I think they're better than maybe we gave them credit for a couple months ago. They're old. They've got some 3-point shooting, and I like that combination there where they got a lot of players on this roster that are older. And so count me in as a bit more fascinated by Oklahoma than I was a couple months ago.
Yep, I'm definitely trending up, but slowly with this Oklahoma team. Rewind a few months ago, and I think we had him slated down at 16th. I trust Porter Moser. I do. He hasn't had a KenPom finish, a bad KenPom finish at Oklahoma. I'm pretty sure, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't been sub 50. And if that's wrong, it's not much lower than that at Oklahoma. But I just trust him. He's got a lot of graduates. He's got two returners in the front court with Jalen Moore and Sam Godwin to kind of lead the physicality, if you want to call it that way. And then, maybe you see what you get out of Jeremiah Fears or Glenn Taylor Jr. or something like that. So talent-wise, they're not going to match up well against the rest of the league. They're going to be outmatched in a lot of games. But I trust Moser to get it done for a few games. So a little bit higher than this summer.
Again, another hard team to figure. Main reason, they're 4 most experienced players in terms of last year's minutes. Jaden Jones spent last year at Long Beach State. Duke Miles, High Point. Kobe Elvis at Dayton. Bryce Gooden, I'm not sure which it is, at Fairfield. So, again, we'll see how the transition goes. But here's the thing, if you want to be bullish on Oklahoma, best composite 3-point percentage based on last year's stats of any team in the league at 41%. I feel like they're going to win some games just on that alone.
Well, before we get into the number 13 team, let's just say you're out there and you're deciding, you know what, these guys don't know what they're talking about. And you've decided that you want to bet against us when it comes to our number 13 team that we're going to have in our composite ranking, because history would suggest that that's a great idea to bet against us when it comes to our number 13 team. And I keep saying that on repeat, our number 13 team, because we're going to reveal it in a second, and that fan base is not going to be happy with us for a second straight year. I'll tell you who is happy with us. It's our friends at BetOnline. Because basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back, so is college basketball, by the way. Opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, it's all there. They've got you covered. Best odds, biggest promotions, live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline is every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. It's not just the NBA. They have the BetOnline has the odds for everything. Football, MLB, NHL. They got your political props if you're all in on those. Head to the website today, get on the action. America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. All right. Number 13. We've done it again. The South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, I think this is too low. I'm just going to tell you right now. It's not me sucking up to South Carolina fans. I think this is too low. And, again, if we look at the rankings, they were 11th in the SEC preseason poll. Somehow we have them at 13th, and I'm not sure how they got there. But, hey, math is math, and the math last year was that we had them as the number 14 team in the SEC, and that turned out okay for Father Lamont Paris and the Gamecocks. So you could also wonder, are we just doing this to set South Carolina up for success for a second straight season? Max, that is what I am assuming, that we just, why pick them to be at the top when we can just all pick them here and they can just go out and do their thing?
If South Carolina makes us look like fools and Lamont Paris coaches up another masterclass, will I be surprised? Not at all. Not at all. But if they end up at 13th, will I be surprised also? No, not at all. When you look at the backcourt, it's just a bunch of question marks for me. It's night and day from Talon Cooper and Michi Johnson. Is Jamari Thomas and Cam Scott good? Are they talented? Yes. Are they proven in the SEC? Not at all. And then you move to the 3 spot. You got Zachary Davis, hell of a defender, not much of a shooter. I don't know where the shooting's going to come from. A little bit worried about that. BJ Mack did a lot of that spacing for him last year, taking the underneath out. They don't have that anymore this year. And then can Nick Pringle stay on the floor? He doesn't have many games in his career longer than 25 minutes on the floor because of his foul trouble. So I love Murray Boyles. I love Lamont Paris. I love the defense. But a lot of question marks for me.
They've got a star, maybe a superstar. That's always a good start. But the way they played a year ago with Cooper and Michi Johnson, I thought those guys were just so steady. I don't think they've got that in the backcourt this year. Last year, they had about 8,500 minutes coming in terms of what the guys played the year before. It was number one in the league. This year, they're around 5,300. So they lost not only a lot of good players, but a lot of experience too. And I think that's probably going to leave a bit of a mark.
South Carolina fans, the low man on the Gamecocks this year is on this video. I will not name names, but he is on this video. All right, number 12, the Georgia Bulldogs, everyone's favorite sleeper team from what I've seen so far in the preseason. And Georgia was picked 12th here in the SEC preseason media poll, for whatever that is worth. But, Max, we talked about the Bulldogs, certainly a team I think that there's understandable reasons as to why they could be kind of that sleeper team. Feels like, this is maybe the team Mike White's been building towards. And, we've already seen some of those new pieces. We talked about Asa Newell. I think, kind of a lot of exciting new pieces joining some of the returners. And if you put that together, you can see why there seems to be some upward momentum for this program right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you said everyone's favorite sleeper because I was going to say the same thing. I feel like everyone's picking Georgia. I mean, they're fun. They're young. They got some highly recruited freshmen, and they're huge. Don't have anyone under 6'4". So it'll be fun to watch just defensively. It'll be very physical. Not sure where all the shooting is going to come from. And they got a really tough road schedule. But I think when I look at this roster, I think they're just a year away. Give me one more year of Demery, Blue Kane, get RJ Godfrey as a senior, Abeson as a senior, and then try to fill in with some more shooting. Very young team, youngest team in the league. Going to be a ton of fun. They're going to win some games. The defense is going to be nasty. Rebounding is going to be really good too. But just real young and really tough road schedule.
They were a hard team for me to know what to do with because Asa Newell maybe gives him a rim protector that some of the rest of the league doesn't have. That's a good thing. He's also a freshman. Freshman bigs tend to get in foul trouble. The backcourt, Blake, you said something interesting I was going to kind of push back on about you don't know where the three-point shooting comes from. And then I looked. They only had two guys that hit over 53s last year. That's Dakota LaFew and then Blue Kane, who hit exactly 50. We know everybody needs a Blue Kane, and they've got one. That counts for a lot. But I think a lot of probably people's opinions go on, do you buy into Silas Demery stepping up and becoming like a superstar? Some people do. I think they're a hard team to figure. Dylan James gave them more down the stretch last year than probably is on paper coming in. So and then Tyron Lawrence. Tyron Lawrence could have a bounce back year after kind of not being as good at Vanderbilt last year. So I think there's a lot of room for leeway either way with this team.
You hear that, Max? Chris already blaming me for something that you said. And so it begins for the 24-25 season.
Haven't missed a beat.
Haven't missed a beat. All right, Mississippi State's number 11. The Bulldogs were number 10 in the SEC preseason media poll. So, again, maybe that makes us haters. I don't think so. Because I have said I think Mississippi State would be one of the sleeper teams that I'm in on at this point. And boy, Max, they're going to do it in a different way this year. We may have Josh Hubbard out here shooting 23s. We may have Riley Kugel shooting 23s. And this is just going to be, I think, a different style for the Bulldogs this year. They're still going to have some of your bully ball represented by, Mr. Cam Matthews. But front court's a bit different than we're used to. And I think that this is kind of where you look at Kanye Clary, Josh Hubbard, Riley Kugel. They brought in R.J. Melendez. The guard play, I think, makes this team a lot more intriguing, and I think it's just, again, it's going to be a little different this year than we've seen for these Mississippi State teams under Chris Jans, because I feel like it's going to be led by sort of the perimeter play versus the front court play.
Yeah, I don't really know what to expect with this team, to be honest. I feel like we say with LSU that we don't really know. I don't really know with this team. I haven't seen a Chris Jans Mississippi State team without Tolu Smith. I mean, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I rewatched Mississippi State, Kentucky. It was a great game, but Tolu Smith is the only reason that was a game. Is the only reason. He had like 10 of their first 14 points or something. Just sets the tone, gets Bradshaw in foul trouble right away. Like Tolu Smith was the team, and then it was built around him. And we just have somehow not just forgotten that Tolu Smith has gone, and it's exciting that Kugel's in and Clary and everything. I think the backcourt's going to be a ton of fun. But we lost Tolu Smith and didn't replace him with really anyone. So I got my questions for the front court.
This team is like when you walk into a room and you see a college buddy that you hadn't seen in like 20 years or something. You're like, I think that looks like you, but I'm not really sure. And that's kind of what this team is. Like, we talked about how Vanderbilt's going to shoot threes like crazy. The guys on this roster shot like 150 something more threes, or more than Vandy did. And that was not what they were a year ago, as we know. Josh Hubbard's got a green light, but I just think it's such an interesting transformation. Now, they do have some elements of what they were. Cam Matthews is back, but just very hard for me to wrap my brain around what they are, because I heard Chris Jans say it with his own lips at Media Day. Defensively, we may not be what we were in rebounding before, but it's a different look with the shooting and all that. I know that's why Max broke up with them.
Music to my ears. Don't play defense. We're going to shoot. Josh Hubbard and Riley Kugel combined for 38 threes a game. My team, the Dogs.
And that's why you picked them first.
Well, I think I may have been the high man of Mississippi State. I don't remember. I'll tell you what, though. We are the high men on number 10. The Missouri Tigers, who, no, don't worry, I didn't pay off my fellow peers here to rank them higher, because we did pick them 3 spots higher than the SEC preseason media poll. But we all seem to see the positives with this Missouri team. And I just keep saying, to me, that there is such a huge difference in the roster we saw last year and the one we saw this year. There's more depth. There's more room for error in terms of being able to maintain a consistent production if you have injuries and those kind of things. Just couldn't do it last year. And I keep saying, I know I keep bringing it up, doesn't matter. This team was not that far away last year. They lost a lot of close games. I think this year they've added more experience. Tony Perkins comes in. Caleb Grill's back. Mark Mitchell comes in, a potential superstar on this roster. They got a lot of pieces around these guys. Tamar Bates, comes back. Our guy, Josh Gray, Chris's number 1 pick in the SEC basketball draft. They got a lot of pieces on this team. Now, can it all come together? Max still have questions about the shooting. No doubt about that, but I just think this roster is better than it was last year, and I think that should mean improvement for the Tigers.
Yep, I think they're better everywhere, literally everywhere, and they got depth at every single position. Maybe behind Mark Mitchell, it's a little bit of a question, but everywhere else, you can go 2 deep, sometimes even 3 deep. If you're looking at like a 2 spot, you got Caleb Grill, Marquise Warwick, and Anor Boateng. I mean, come on. They're loaded with talent. You want to make some free money. Missouri money line on Monday against Memphis, probably going to get it at plus odds, and you'll be able to, take the misses out on a night out for free. So there you go. We're high on Missouri, and you should be too.
To quote one of us in the pre-broadcast chat, it's not about your whole roster and what it did. It's about your players individually. And you know what? Tony Perkins is going to be one of the best point guards in this league. Had an assist turnover of almost 2.5, played a ton of minutes. Tamar Bates, everybody kind of forgets it because they were so bad, but he took over games at times last year as a scorer. The Mitchell ad was a terrific one that got Josh Gray to be a little bit of an enforcer in the paint. Caleb Grill gave them nothing last year because of the injury. He was a class of 2019 kid who would have really helped them a year ago. They added Warwick. They added Cruz. I think this is a team that a lot of people are sleeping on because that noise of 0-18 last year is still kind of hanging around, and it's not that much.
I still think we're too low on them, but we'll see if that's how it plays out.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I would never have any bias towards Dennis Gates, but I tend to think we may be a little too low on Missouri. But the problem is, if Missouri's going to move up, they got to eclipse these other teams, and I think this is where you start to get into teams where 1 through 9, I'd be stunned if any of these teams miss the NCAA tournament. And that's the problem. Like, Missouri can be better. All these teams behind them can be better, but it's just where do you put them? Because I think these top 9, again, you're going to have a very disappointed fan base at all these schools if they don't make the NCAA tournament. And we start at number 9, which is Ole Miss. Ole Miss was ranked, folks, in the preseason poll to start the season, as were 8 other SEC teams. You had 9 teams, and Ole Miss was the last of the group there in the SEC preseason media poll. I think Ole Miss was picked at 9 as well. But, Max, I'll turn this one over to you. this feels like a Chris Beard team. Finally, I think they've got all the pieces, and I think if you're looking for the breakthrough for the Rebels, it comes this season. And again, another team that I would not be stunned if Ole Miss is a top 5 team in the league this year. I think they're good enough to be there. I don't think they had that ceiling last year after that great start. This team, I think, does have much more forward movement in terms of maybe creeping into that top 5 and being the surprise.
I was 1 year off on Ole Miss. Last year, I was huge on him. I loved Beard coming in. I was 1 year off. He's got the guys now. I'm a little bit worried about rim protection and maybe a little bit of rebounding. Other than that, this team's going to be fantastic. They're going to switch everything. They're going to have that classic Mark Adams, Texas Tech, no-medal defense. You got NBA talent in Morrell. You've got glue guys like Brakefield, Dre Davis, seasoned veteran point guard in Sean Padula. This team's got it all. I really, really like this team.
They have got experience in the backcourt coming out their ears. I said earlier in the show, Vanderbilt was number 2 in the league in terms of the minutes its roster played last year at the D1 level. Ole Miss is number 1. 9,015 minutes played by this roster. That's like 800 and something more than South Carolina had a year ago. We know how that ended. That team really overachieved. 3-pointers, this team hit 430 of them last year. The players on this roster did. We know what Chris Beard can do. We know defensively last year they did not look like a Chris Beard team. I think there's a chance, and I voted them a couple spots higher, I think, than we did as a collective. I think there's a chance we are really sleeping on this team because, I mean, Dre Davis, Jalen Murray, Matt Morrell, Padula, Brakefield, Malik. These guys are – Diaz a real wild card too. I mean, he could really do some things for them. I don't know which way that's going to go. This is a team with a lot of experience at guard and will shoot a lot of threes. And defensively, I have some of the same concerns on paper, but they are coached by a guy who has a history more often than not of figuring that out.
Well, guess what? They're going to win a lot of non-conference games. I can tell you that right now. Max and I talked about that. They're going to be in the top 25 for a while, in my opinion, because I just think the schedule sets up very nicely again for them. But all right, let's go to the next team, which again I've mentioned Texas. They're at number 8. They were picked at number 7 in the SEC preseason media poll. But I think Texas is another team that, again, I look at this and I mean, what's not to like? Like you've got the Indiana State guys, you got Trey Johnson, absolute stud freshman. You got Tremont Mark, who's played 100 minutes a game for the past however long. I mean, Arthur Kaluma was a huge pickup late, I think. You got Shedrick in the front court. They got size. I mean, they're long, and I think that's too. Like, again, Trey Johnson's your shooting guard at 6'6", and Mark's there. I think Texas is a team that if they put it all together, you know, we talk about Ole Miss, but to me, like, Texas is a team that I don't know if they're winning the SEC, but man, this is one of those teams, Max, we talk about how we've changed our opinion over the months. Like, I've gotten higher and higher on Texas, and honestly was a little bit surprised they were all the way here at 8th in our composite ranking.
In years past, we would have been talking about Trey Johnson a lot more, just with the era of the transfer portal. We kind of don't talk about freshmen as much, but man, Trey Johnson at 6'6" at the 2 is lethal. And you got Chendall Weaver right behind him, who's a monster. If this team had a more secure 5 spot, we've seen Shedrick in high competition situations just really not produce well at all. And, you know, then you have Vincent, the freshman, behind him. Not sure what to trust there. If they had a more trustworthy 5 spot, I'd be all in on this team. I'd be all in. I love the 1 through 4. And I really like Jason Kent behind Kaluma. I think Kent might even be a little bit better than Kaluma based on the spacing that Kent can provide. But I don't know what's going on with the 5 spot. I can see
you don't need a 5.
I can see that costing them.
You know,
well, they don't have a back to the basket scorer. You know, Kaluma's not a back to the basket guy at the 4. He's a sit outside guy and operate in space a little bit. So I think they might be able to be a little bit too perimeter oriented, but nitpicking.
Blake said what's not to like. I'll give you the thing that may be the thing that you don't like.
Here we go.
You look at the top 9 guys on their roster, minutes played. 8 of them played somewhere else last year. Does that mean I think they're not going to be good? No. I just mean that could take them a little time to gel with guys who haven't played together. Now, I will tell you something I love. 5 guys on this team played over 1,000 minutes last year. And nobody's talking about Tremont Mark. I mean, maybe last year he just got tainted by being in what just seemed to be like a disaster of a locker room where Arkansas underachieved. But Tremont Mark is a dude, can do a lot of stuff. They've got the 2 kids from Indiana State. They've got Arthur Kaluma. They've got Weaver. I think they'll defend really well. I think this is a really, really good team. They won't shoot a ton of threes, probably compared to some other teams, but they're pretty good shooting in terms of percentages at all 3 levels. A lot to like here. I just think it's going to be, how long does it take for this to come together potentially?
Well, I will applaud Texas. They're going to play Ohio State. They go to NC State. They play UConn at home. They start their SEC schedule, and this is where you could get a little bit – I could probably hold my expectations in check a little bit. They start the SEC play at Texas A&M, as we talked about. Then they host Auburn. Then they host Tennessee. So, could they be 0-3 after the first 3 games? Yep. And that could be a problem because they've still got to go to Florida a week after that. Missouri, A&M, at Ole Miss. They got a pretty brutal front half of the SEC schedule. So that's one where, yes, could we be looking up and Texas is way down here, maybe further down than we expect by the time we get to February, potentially, because it's not an easy schedule. And I don't even want to say it lets up on the back half, but it seems to be a little bit better, maybe, in terms of how it sets up. So, I could be higher on this team, but for all the reasons you guys mentioned, I could also say, you know what, we'll see.
Blake, that sounds like a recipe for 10 seed that makes the Elite 8 or Final 4.
Well, that's the thing. That's what we keep saying, right? I mean, you can be the 8th best team in the SEC or the 9th best team in the SEC and still be, dancing a couple weeks in. So,
yeah.
All right, number 7, Florida, the Gators, who were picked number 6 in the SEC preseason poll. So we are officially haters on the Gators. But, I mean, I don't know. This is one where, again, if I look at our individual rankings, I think that, and let me pull this up again just to make sure. I think there was one person in particular, and if that person would like to give us their thoughts, they can, that was a little bit lower than others were on this particular Florida Gator team. But, Max, it was not you or I, spoiler alert. I think when you look at this, Walter Clayton, he's a top 3 player in the league. I don't know why in the world we're still not talking about Elijah Martin. No clue. I mean, Max, the SEC basketball experience, prediction number 1, I think, on our bold predictions was me picking this guy to be first team All SEC. Yeah. Our guy, Neil Blackman, predicting him to be the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. Why we're not talking about this guy, I don't know. Then you got Alex Condon, Tommy Hawk there in the front court. No Loggden, no Tyrese Samuel. I think there are reasons to question what that looks like. But I still think this is a team that, to me, feels like a Todd Golden team. And when you're led by fantastic guards, you've always got a chance to win a lot of games in this league. And that's why I still think Florida's got a chance to do that.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite floors. I would be absolutely shocked if this team is low. You know how we were just talking about Texas, where we could, with the scheduling and we can see how the transfers. Not with this team. I would be shocked if they're not good with Walter Clayton, Elijah Morton, and Will Richard leading the show, and then with the freshman Clavzar and then breakout from Aberdeen. Also, the backcourt is looking real nice. The reason why I don't have them higher is I don't know if the front court is going to dominate like they did games last year. I mean, there were games where Loggden and Tyrese Samuel dominated. I mean, just men amongst boys. Very excited for Condon in year 2 and the transfers Chinyelu and Alexis. I've heard great things, but I don't know if they're going to be at that Tyrese Samuel and Loggden, we're taking over, you're not getting a rebound type of game, but would be absolutely shocked if this team is not good.
I love how our man Blake just outs people without leaving his fingerprints directly on it, but pointing with both fingers and waving hands and everything. Okay, I was the low man on Florida, if you haven't figured that out by now. Here's all kidding aside. I don't know that we've got a lot of difference between, say, 7 and 12. I mean, I think it may be a game or two in the standings, and I'm a little worried because I think that the Martin Clayton duo is fantastic. I think Will Richard has been one of the more underrated guys in the league. I think their front court guys are, there's a lot of teams in this league that have a little bit of problem with rim protection, so I don't hold them against them too much, although the transfer from Washington State, Chinyelu, I guess is how you say it, is probably going to help them. I'm a little worried about their overall roster depth a little further down, and like if they get a guy hurt, maybe there's a little bit less margin for error. That's probably how I went about it in my mind. I mean, we're separating differences of millimeters between teams, so you got to use something as a separator. That's mine. Was I worried when I filed my prediction that I was too low and I'm going to feel like an idiot later? Yes, I was. I mean, but that's the league we're in. It's just there's so little separation between these teams. I mean, there may be 10 teams in this league that can make an Elite Eight. So, that's where I stand on these guys.
I would never do such a thing to you, Chris. I don't know why you think I would do that. All right, let's get to the top 6 because I will admit here. Let me look at this real quick to make sure I'm not wrong. I'm pretty sure technically I was the low man on this next team. But it wasn't by much. It was only by a spot. So number 6 is Kentucky. So yes, like you guys, if I look at our individual rankings, and again, you can tell if you want to have them if you want, but pretty much everybody had Kentucky in the, I mean, I had them at 7, so like I wasn't that far off, but everybody else had them, in the top 6. And there was someone in particular that had them all the way up at 4. And my goodness, I can say with full confidence, I did not expect that. But Max, it seems like the Cats, the Big Blue Nation, Mark Pope is winning over everyone as we head into the season. And we talk about reactions to what we've seen so far in exhibitions, the hearsay coming out of all that. Would we ever overreact to anything we've seen to this point? Maybe, maybe not. But Max, I am with you. I think for Kentucky, this is a team that, look, if we'd have ranked them, and we probably did 4 months ago, we're probably thinking, all right, is this the 8th best team, the 9th best team? Like, probably wasn't going to put them at 10 or anything like that. But we're just like, there's so many new pieces. But now I do think when you compare them, for everybody on our list here, Kentucky has moved further and further up. And I think that seems to be the theme heading into the season.
Guilty as charged, Blake. 'Twas I with the Wildcats at 4. This is my overreaction, my secret scrimmage overreaction. I had to do one. I am all in on Pope and the Cats after seeing that scrimmage. They're either going to dunk it, layup, or 3. That's it. They're not shooting anything else. It's a little bit outside of my bully ball, pedigree, but when you go that far in the other direction, that radical, I'm in. I think this team is going to be fantastic. I think the offense is going to be a beauty to watch. I think Amari Williams and Garrison as a 1-2 punch at the 5 is very underrated. And the depth pieces of Kentucky are going to be the difference. Being able to bring in guys like Otega Owe, Almanor, Brea, Colin Chandler. More depth than you think. There's going to be more shooting than you think. It's my team. It's my team. Overreaction on the Cats.
I'm going to give you my thoughts on Kentucky. Before I do that, though, I'm going to tell you guys about something that you need to know about. That's Future Fans. I've been talking about it a lot lately. The way Future Fans helps kids become sports fans, and particularly football fans, is incredible. If you've ever tried to explain football to a little kid, you know how hard it is, and the dads who invented this have figured it out for the rest of us. Future Fans is the easy button for getting your kid to watch the game with you on Saturday. I've talked to multiple people who've told me the stories about getting their sons and daughters to try to watch football with this game. The kids are begging, Dad, hey, come watch the game with me on Saturday and Sunday. The stories are incredible. Give it a week or two. Your kid will be doing the same, asking you to watch sports with them. Go to futurefans.com right now. Use the code SEC. They will send you this kit with books, games. It's $50 total. It is an amazing bargain. It is well put together. You can get 10% off with the promo code SEC. Help out the folks who help our show. Go to futurefans.com and see what everybody is so excited about. All right. I'm not going to out anybody, but one of us in the show was a little lower on the Cats.
I already admitted it. What are you talking about? I admitted this 5 minutes ago. I said I picked them 7th. Yeah, I said I picked them 7th. Everybody else picked them 4, 5, and 6. So let's not act like I picked Kentucky down here at 14th or something, all right? I picked them at 7th. Please. That, to me, they're still a top 25 team. Come on, folks. You're not buying what Chris is selling, are you? You better buy Future Fans, but don't buy what he's selling on this right here, okay? Come on.
I don't even know who you are anymore. This team is going to shoot threes. Like what? Why? What? You're just in denial. You should be beating the drum for these guys more than anybody. What is your problem, man?
Chris, the season has not gotten here yet. Who was the person beating the drum for Kentucky last year while you were trying to tell me they don't play defense, all this other stuff? Well, sure, they didn't play defense. Oakland beat them. I get it, all that other stuff. But who cares, all right? It's a new era. It's the Mark Pope era. You're trying to make it sound like, they've gone out and now they're about to be the 15th team and a 16th team SEC. The Cats are going to be shooting threes. You're going to think Tony Delk's out there, Jeff Shepard, Scott Padgett, everybody else that's come through, Ron Mercer, it's going to be out there wheeling and dealing on shooting the threes for the Cats. I'm in on this team. I just, again, like you said it a minute ago, all these teams, and we talked about it, 1 through 9, 10, 11, they're all NCAA tournament teams. And I don't know that there's a bad team in the bunch when we think about, again, if you're a 10 seed in the SEC this year, you're probably still doing okay. So I don't think the Cats are going to be a 10 seed.
The disrespect here, Max Barr. Oh, did you hear all those old Kentucky players he named? Did you notice who he didn't name?
Oh, great.
He didn't name Mark Pope, the head coach of this team. Who, let me tell you, if you were sitting in the room at media days,
you would run
through a wall to play for this guy. He's wearing the jacket. He's got the whole thing.
Chris shook Mark Pope's hand. He had the jacket on. Maybe he's feeling the material, and he's like, you know what? I'm all in on this guy. That's a nice suede polyester jacket, and I'm ready. Count me in on Mark Pope.
Want him over.
I'm just not going to stand for Blake's Kentucky disrespect here. These guys as a unit shot 40% from 3 last year. They hit a crap ton of them. How many did they hit? They hit 424 threes, the guys on this roster. And that didn't count Travis Perry.
Were they all on the same team last year, Chris? Because that was your argument earlier against Texas. They weren't all on the same team. Was Kentucky's players on the same team last year? How many players they got returning? Come on.
Well, we do have a little bit of a problem there. When Grant Darbyshire is your leading returning minute getter.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Don't make me pick a lane.
My goodness. Yeah. Don't do that.
Jeez.
All right, so you got Kentucky in the national championship is what you're saying.
Sure, why not? No, seriously, I think, you know what? I do think he's going to bring an energy back to that program that was kind of lacking. I'm not saying John Calipari is a bad coach because obviously he's a Hall of Famer for a reason. But it got a little stale, and you could just feel a little bit of a different energy in the room when you watch him in media day. And I like the way he's constructed the team, and that some of these guys actually defended reasonably well at their previous stops. So there's that too. I just think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I don't disagree at all. I completely agree with you 100%. In fact, we were much higher on Kentucky than the preseason media were. Kentucky was picked 8th in the preseason poll. We picked them here at 6th. Look at us. All of us, every single one of us, picked them higher than 8th. Okay? So there you go. The Cats coming in.
Who's number 5?
Regenerized. Is that a word? No.
It is now.
I don't think regenerized is a word.
Regenerized.
Something like that. They are coming into the season. Sleep. All right. Number 5. Number 5. The Tennessee Vols.
Disrespect.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you have the floor for this one because I don't think this is disrespect at all. And I know that may not go over well with Tennessee fans. And no, we talk about overreacting to just one game. Tennessee lost that exhibition game to Indiana. They shot 30%. There were issues scoring the ball, but Max, that is that's the one thing I've said with Tennessee. I said if I'm a little bit hesitant with this team going the season, not going to be defense because they're going to be top 5 in defense. They have been forever now under Rick Barnes. But I do want to see the consistency with the scoring. No Dalton Connect. Can Chaz Lanier be that guy? Zakai Ziegler, Jemai Mashak, best combo defensive unit in the country. I just want to see how they're going to score consistently. And I know it's easy to say, well, look what happened in one exhibition game. But I do think you can tell some things from that in terms of like who's going to be the guys who are going to hit tough shots and be put in those positions and that kind of stuff. So Tennessee at 5, I guarantee you will feel like some disrespect to some people. But I also think it's okay for now because I think you can take the wait-and-see approach on Tennessee offensively to see how they figure things out post-Dalton Connect.
Chris, I'll leave it to you.
Well, the difference between Blake and myself is Blake thinks defense doesn't matter. And Rick Barnes has got other ideas. This team is such a high-floor defensive team year in and year out. It's the pedigree. It's what they do. Is it going to be ugly? Yes, it's ugly every year. They have like a week in February where they shoot like the 3 of us combined. And I get it. But you know what? They always defend. They're always there in the tournament every year. I trust Rick Barnes to figure it out. Now, do all those things that Blake said concern me? Yes. I think like even last year, they had Dalton Connect, who was a superstar, and they still had those little lapses at times. They had trouble matching up with bigs. But I just, to me, this was a floor pick more than a ceiling pick. I don't know that they can win the league. They can, but I would put the teams in front of them with a better chance, and maybe even some teams behind them. But I just feel like their floor every year is so high, you've got to put them in this range.
Yeah, I'm like in between of both of you guys.
Just let him have it. He's dying to say something. Just go with it, man.
I think it's so funny because Chris is talking like, Chris picked Tennessee to win the league. He picked them 4th. I picked them 5th. Like what a huge C like there is between those two picks, right? Come on now.
The way you say it.
Get out of here. I was just pointing out their potential flaws.
Blake Lovell.
Just as you did with Texas, just as you did with other teams, I am willing to point out a team's potential flaws, except for a couple in a second I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about any flaws with those teams. But that's all. And but Chris, you and I, we were not the lowest men on Tennessee on this particular staff. So
our man Max gets to be in the frying pan now.
Now you've outed Max. I wasn't going to do it. You outed Max on this one. So.
Yeah, that was all me.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had Tennessee at 6, admittedly. Huge difference. They're one of the teams trending down for me heading into the season. I've got my worries on this offense. I think when you're looking at Ken Pom, I think it's going to be a similar year to 21, where you're looking at a top 5 defense and your offense is outside the top 75. I think they're going to go through some major droughts. And it's going to be ugly, which means I'm going to be watching it because I like that type of basketball. But I don't know if it's going to translate to wins. Remember last year when we were saying, hey, guys, pace of play is really favoring Tennessee. When these guys want to get out and run, they're squashing teams. It's when they're playing South Carolina and it's getting slowed way down where they're struggling. I don't think they're going to be able to run like that this year. And I think they're going to go through those offensive droughts when they slow it down. So the defense is going to be outstanding. The offense, not so much.
All right, and now we get to the top 4.
Ooh.
For some reason, the Arkansas Razorbacks come in at number 4 here. And I don't say that in a bad way. I'm trying to figure out how the rest of you guys push the Hogs down to number 4. Because as I've said recently, I'm all in on the Arkansas Razorbacks this season. I'm all in on Boogie Fland. My guy, Boogie, who came out and just completely took it to the Kansas Jayhawks in the exhibition game. 16-point victory for the Hogs in that one, Max. And I know we tend to overreact to things, but I do think you can take away, as we said earlier, the individual players and what they can be. And I think you saw from him, okay, like this guy is going to be a factor, a big factor on this team. Look at what DJ Wagner did. How about our guy Big Z, who had a nice performance as well? But look, I've said it. I think for Arkansas, people can pick on John Calipari, and I think just this fresh start is going to be good for everyone. It'll be good for Kentucky. It's going to be good for Cal. And I just think this team is very, very talented. And I keep looking at it that way. And there's no Adu playing, in that exhibition game, just like there was no Hunter Dickinson for Kansas. But I really like this team. I mean, I think they've got the playmaking guards. They've got incredible size in the front court. Shooting, I think, Max, is something we talked about. You can still do I think they're going to be a top half three-point shooting team? Probably not. But I think they'll get their points in other ways. And yes, I was the high man on Arkansas. But again, they're here at 4, and that's not like, that's probably a top 12 team in our eyes.
Yeah, that's it's one of the few definite things I'm taking away from the exhibitions is that Boogie Fland is probably better than we thought he was going to be, and we thought he was going to be pretty good. So that's saying something. The backcourt rock solid. DJ Wagner was phenomenal. John L. Davis didn't even do that much. He didn't need to. Boogie and DJ stole the show. And no Adu, no Dickinson. I feel like Dickinson would have won that matchup, but I don't think it would have changed the outcome all that much. And you didn't get all too much of Adu Thiero doing his thing either. He's probably my favorite player on this team. So yeah, rock solid. What did I have him at? I think I had him at 5. So okay. Not much different. This team's growing on me though, Blake. I think they're growing on you a little bit more than me, but definitely trending in the right direction heading into the season.
Things to like. Watched the game the other night. Don't know how much stock to put into it, but boy, Boogie Fland was good. They've got Billy Richmond. They've got Carter Knox. They've got young talent. They've got pieces. They've got Jonas Adu inside. They got Trevon Brazile. They've got Big Z for whatever that's worth. They got Thiero. They got an experienced guard and John L. Davis. A lot to like there. And if you watch them tonight, you're going, holy cow, they can be good. Biggest concerns for me, Brazile had issues with health last year. Can he? I know they have some pieces beside him, but you would want him to be out there all the time. I'm a little concerned about that because big men who have been injured sometimes going to have issues with that. And if that's not a concern, then hey, that's a lot off the concern list. The other thing, far and away, this team, its players on the roster had fewer minutes than anybody else in the league. Everybody in the league had at least 5,000 minutes. I think 14 of the 16 teams had their players log at least 6,000 minutes last year. These guys barely had 4,000 minutes at a D1 level. Now, again, you offset some of that by youth, but we spent less time talking about freshmen in this league than we ever have because you got class of 20 and even 19 guys playing in this league, and that's the way the game goes, is old. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of room for variability in some things that could really hurt them, or they could. I mean, talent-wise, they could also win the whole thing.
Agreed. All right, number 3. Max will also agree with that statement for the number 3 team we have, and it's Texas A&M, who, as usual, Max has been really pushing the propaganda this offseason with the Aggies. So I'll let him have the floor for this one. I know he's all in on A&M, despite losing to Houston in the exhibition game. Max, I think Wade Taylor is pretty good, despite what some rankings may tell you. Some preseason player rankings out there. He's pretty good, and I think that when you look at, again, the way A&M stacks up, they may struggle to shoot the ball still, but my goodness, they may grab every rebound. They may play good enough defense to just stop everyone. And when you got an absolute stud in Wade Taylor leading the way, your Aggies, Max, are good enough to win the league.
Yeah, I saw some panic after the result against Houston in the scrimmage, but let it be known, if there were 2 players that you need to have against Houston, it's probably your best passer and then probably your best defender, and they didn't have either. They didn't have Phelps or Solo Washington. So I don't know. I'm not taking much from that. Wade Taylor had a good game, and the offensive rebounding was there. With this team, it's more of a floor bet than a ceiling bet. I just trust this team's floor. I trust Wade Taylor to have enough good games. I trust the front court to not forget how to rebound. I don't think they're going to shoot that well. And honestly, with Phelps, he hasn't practiced in a month, and Solo Washington hasn't practiced in a week or two. They might start out a little slow if this team's all banged up already. It might be a little rough. But when it all comes together, I think this is going to be the hardest playing team in the league. I think they're going to be really good defense, rebound the heck out of the ball. And when it comes down to it, those February games, those March games, that's when I really like this team. It might be a little rough out the gate, though, because we've got some injuries.
When I do my predictions, I kind of start a team towards the bottom and I start slide them up. In other words, you better than the 12 team, the 11 team, and so on. And for a while, I had A&M more towards the middle because, boy, there's some stuff here that's concerning. I mean, when they go out and shoot threes, they're as likely to crack a backboard as they are to shoot you out of the gym. They don't shoot twos particularly well. But when we talk about continuity, these guys have played probably more ball together as a roster. Wade Taylor, Anderson Garcia, Jace Carter, Solo Washington, Henry Coleman, who I think can give them more stuff. Obaseki, Hefner. And then they added some parts in Phelps. They added Wiltshire, who really gives them kind of the shooting accuracy they need. They had Farrell Payne, who's going to help them inside. I just feel like they went out and they have a core of a roster back. They went and got pieces that strategically fit exactly what they need. And then you got Buzz Williams, who's a terrific coach. I have concerns, but I think the good is going to outweigh the bad here.
The only thing I would add is what I've said about A&M all summer, and I'm like, you have to remember one thing. They were still 15-13 entering March last year.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those same pieces there. And so I want to see more consistency with them. Like Max said, maybe it's a little ugly out of the gate, but I just want more consistency. If we can get that from A&M, I will maybe buy in even more. But yes, just like you guys, I picked them in the top 4 as well. So, yeah. There you go. All right, 2-1. I mean, look, there's not much mystery here. This has been 2-1 for all summer since last year, basically when we started doing. I mean, since after last season, we said these were probably going to be the top 2 teams in our rankings, and it really hasn't changed a lot at all in our composite ranking since then. So, if number 2 is Alabama, we know that number 1 is Auburn. Or excuse me, if number 2 is Auburn, we know number 1 is Alabama. I just tried to play to both fan bases there. But yes, Auburn's number 2. Max, I mean, I feel like we've talked about these 2 teams so much. I don't even know what else to add. Like, it's just Auburn's experience. They got an All-American, in Janai Broome. They've got a lot, I think, in terms of, bringing guys back. They're an older team. I like that about them. I've said that a lot. The guard play we mentioned, going to be very interesting to see how the rotation plays out. But, yeah, I mean, I think you can pretty much bank on this Auburn team finishing somewhere in this top part of the SEC for sure.
Yeah, it's not much. It's really not much. But in the summer, I was more like, this is definitely 2-1. I would be shocked if this wasn't 2-1. And now it's more like, I could see if Auburn's 5-4-3. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But the developments of the point guard and is Pegues ready? Is he not ready? Are we going to try Denver Jones there? Are we going to try Tahad, Miles Kelly? Just that little bit of kind of question around who's going to be the guy with the ball in his hands and how they're kind of experimenting with that in practice. That has kind of just pulled me back just a step. I still have them here at 2. But before it was like, wow, this team is definitely number 2, could probably be 1. Now they're a little bit more like 5-4-3-2 for me rather than hanging up there at 1. But
all right, this team checks just about all the boxes. Do they have a lot of guys that have played together? Yes. Broome, Jones, Baker, Mazzara, Chaney Johnson, Dylan Cardwell, Chris Moore. Do they shoot threes reasonably well? About 36% is what their roster shot last year. They have guys that can hit them in volume. They shoot about 76% from the line as a team, what their guys did last year. We talked about assist to turnover ratio. Guys on this roster, 1.5 last year as a whole. So they don't turn the ball over. They pass it well. Do they have a thing that nobody else in the league has? Yes. His name is Janai Broome. Do they have a Hall of Fame level coach? Yes. What is there not to like with this team? I think there might be some teams with the ceiling a little bit higher, but but the floor with these guys is awfully, awfully high. I think that the one knock is they didn't win the games against the good teams a year ago. I have a feeling that's going to turn around a bit this year.
All right. And the number one is Alabama. Again, what do you say that hasn't already been said? I mean, Max, it's just like we said, they're coming off a Final Four run. They're absolutely loaded at every position. And I mean, I don't know how else I could put Alabama anywhere other than number one heading into the season. I just don't know how you make the argument to put this team anywhere but this spot. And some years we don't always say that. Some years it's a big debate, but I just don't think there's a debate this year. I think they're the number one team, not only in the SEC. I think they're the number one team in the country heading into the season.
Yeah, and it might not be as juggernaut as we thought in like the first month, just because we've got a few injuries dealing with. Reed's coming back off one, then you got Youngblood injured, right cell coming back off one. So it might not be pedal to the metal from game one, but come SEC play, I don't want to compare them to an NBA team. I'm not doing that, but they have a lot of NBA draft talent on this team, and man, they're going to be humming come SEC play. Let's put it that way.
You got one of the two best players in the league, depending on whether you value big men or point guards. If it's big men, it's Broome. If it's point guards, it's Sears. I think Sears, based on durability, is probably your guy, maybe National Player of the Year. And then they went out and they got what they needed with Big Cliff from Rutgers. A rim protector. By the way, Nelson does a little bit of that. They brought in experienced guys and Millette and Youngblood. They brought in talented freshmen. They stole Aiden Holloway away from Auburn, who's a really talented player. Will give maybe Sears a little bit of a break this year. I don't blame Oates for keeping him on the floor, but maybe he could use a little rest this year. They've got everything. I think that was probably the easiest pick I had to make was taking Bama at 1.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Are sure to be wrong. SEC composite rankings heading into the season. Yeah, I mean, again, we know these are. We just try to do these for fun. You only go by what you see on paper, and in a league like this where you're probably going to get 10 SEC or 10 NCAA tournament teams in, I don't think the order really is all that significant. Like, I think it's just you can swap so many of these teams this year. We have our fun with our debates about this team or that team, but I mean, you can swap so many that they're all interchangeable, I think, in terms of some of those teams in the middle. And again, I mean, I think this is a year where you've got, I think every team comes into this year thinking they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Not going to happen, but I think everyone believes they have a shot. And I don't think we can say that every single year. But this year, I do think you can say, if I see the upside for this team or that team, they may be a bubble team, or they may be a top 4 seed or something like that. So there you go.
Blake, I believe we have an announcement that I
All
forgot
right, Max.
about.
So you did mention the announcement. Because this has been so long, we have gone an hour on this thing, which we knew we were going to do. Do we think we should hold the announcement off until our big live stream we're going to do on Sunday night, the night before the start of the 24-25 season? It's your call, or we can do it now, but if we think it would be better, we can also hold it off. It's up to you.
I like that better. Right before the season?
The night before. How about we release this big reveal on Sunday night? We're going to do a live stream, Christmas Eve, as we will call it here.
Oh, nice.
The season starts on Monday. We're going to do a special Christmas Eve live stream on Sunday nights. Don't even care what NFL game we're going up against. Doesn't matter. Basketball will be played on Monday. And so there you have it. Let's do that, Max.
Yeah, your fantasy team's 2-5 anyways. Just chalk it up. Hang out with us on a Sunday night.
There you go.
Max, I think the pregame instructions were, let's do this in about 20 minutes. Were they not?
I think it was like 20-25. And, I mean, in our time, that's around what we hit.
That's like asking water not to be wet. That's just what we do. We get on here. We are passionate about SEC basketball. We love it. I wish they'd start the season now. Like, what would you pay just to start the season in 10 minutes and just move on with all the talk? I'd pay some money for that. And
give me
if you're
Kentucky,
watching,
Arkansas
you
right now.
Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
In all seriousness, can't wait for the season to start. Going to be doing a ton of basketball content still in the middle of football season. As soon as we finish this, I'm going to bounce and do more of that. We're doing baseball in the off season. We do everything here at Southeastern 16 year round. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you haven't, that's free. Hit the like button. That helps our analytics. If you're interested in advertising, we reach millions of people a year. Caroline.smith at southeastern14.com. For Max Barr and Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16, presented by Bet Online.